The Legion of the Weeping Woman. Llorona. The tall thin spirit is said to be blessed with natural beauty and long flowing black hair. Wearing a white gown, she roams the rivers and creeks, wailing into the night and searching for children to drag, streaming to a watery grave. This event took place in 1987. A 9-year-old boy named John and his family were traveling to the village of his grandmother. He observed that the village was lovely and peaceful. He started to get curious when he saw a long wooden cross on every door of a house. The journey started to move deeper into the woods in order to get to their destination. They arrived at the house after a short while. John's grandmother was already waiting for them in the doorway. As soon as he exited the car, John spotted a huge wooden cross hanging on the front door. As the time goes, the sun sets on the horizon. John was sitting in the garden with his grandmother. He made the decision to ask his grandmother about a cross affixed to the door. When he inquired, John's grandmother's eyes widened. After a short time of silence, John's grandmother said that the reason was to prevent the weeping woman from entering the house. John peered at her with curiosity and asked her who is the weeping woman. His grandmother whispered, "Llorona." John's grandmother said that the weeping woman is the ghost of a doomed mother who drowned her children and now spends eternity searching for children. His grandmother continued by saying that some have seen her crying near the village river. After dusk, nobody dared to visit the river. John thought it was silly that the fact that the villagers truly believe this tale, which clearly sounds like made up to him. After a few moments, John's grandmother said that they needed to get into the house. When John asked why, she responded that they cannot be out at this time. John headed to his room. When he opened his door, he heard his grandmother calling him. He turned around and looked at her. No matter what he hears, his grandmother advised him to ignore it and remain in the room till morning. John nodded and gave her a smile and entered his room. John could not sleep because he felt uneasy in the new environment. When John awoke, it was midnight when he checked the time. He wanted to get some water because he was a little thirsty. He left his room and made his way to the kitchen. Suddenly, he heard a loud wailing sound coming from outside. John peered out the window in the kitchen to see if anyone was outside. He noticed his mother standing outside in the garden. John was puzzled and wondered what his mother was doing outside at this late night. In an instant, John's mother started to walk towards the woods. John quickly walked outside and called her out, but she ignored his call and kept on walking. Joel decided to chase after her because he was afraid she would be attacked by wild animals in the woods. He did realize he had gone deep into the woods while running. He had lost sight of his mother. John slowed his pace. He was having trouble breathing. He then heard the same wailing sound again, but this time it was closer. John assumed it was his mother. He began to run in the direction of the sound. After a few seconds of running, John ended up near the village river. He looked around for his mother, but he noticed someone else standing in the river. John struggled to see the person because the place was densely fogged, but then he saw a clear image of that person standing in front of him. He came across a tall woman dressed as a bride. Her face was hidden behind the veil. She had long black hair and was crying. John could feel her gaze on him despite her face being covered. John had a bad feeling, and his heart began to race. Suddenly, he heard a woman talking. She said,
"Ay, mis hijos."
Before John could realize, she ran towards John while screaming. John ran as fast he could. The screams became louder and closer to him. John kept running until he arrived at his grandmother's house. He was relieved when he saw the house, and without looking back, John ran inside and locked the door. John ran towards his parents' room to warn his father about him seeing his mother in the woods. When he opened the door of his parents, John's jaw dropped. He noticed his mother next to his father. They were both asleep. John was confused and terrified at the same time. He wondered, if his mother is still here, then who he saw in the woods. He slowly closed the door and he walked towards his room. Suddenly, John heard the same wailing sound again from outside. He approached the window to take a look, and was taken aback by what he witnessed. He saw the same woman in white dress at the garden. Her feet were barely touching the ground as she floats in the air. John could see her face more clearly this time because her face was not hidden behind the veil. She let out a horrifying scream, and blood was pouring from her mouth. She simply vanished into the air after a few moments. John could hardly bear what he had witnessed. He went into his parents' room and slept on the couch, because he was afraid of spending the night alone. The next day, John told his family about what happened last night. After hearing his story, John's grandmother told him that he had met not just any woman. It was Llorona. John was too shocked to respond, and it was at that point that he began to believe in the legend of the weeping woman. John was lucky to escape from the weeping woman's grasp, but not all children are fortunate like John. The villagers can still hear her weeping, the wailing that echoes from the river. Who will she take next? Who will see a white dress and nothing more?